It's Friday, the 22nd of November 2024. Let's take a look at the headlines making waves in the Nigerian dailies of today. Let's begin with the Punch. The bolder headline says, Anti-Tinubu comment. ACF suspends chairman as Afenifere, others back president. You can turn to page 2 to get the complete story. And above the nameplates on page 2, on Ekpa's terror charges, federal government presses for extradition as IPOB disowns Biafra agitator. PDP postpones NAC meeting as North Central insists on chair. You can turn to page 36 of the paper to get the complete story. And beside the nameplates on page 25, 21 states enroll for African Development Bank 850 billion naira agri scheme. The federal governors decide on state police next week. The full story is found on page 18 of the paper. Below the picture on serial grid collapse, NEC panel to boost power generation in states, and Lagos 3 trillion naira 2025 budget prioritizes infrastructure and tourism. The full story is found on page 6 of the paper. Beside that, on page 5, police says visiting US-based Nigerian bought 9 drugs before death. Winners get 77 million naira in Zenith Bank Tech Fair. The full story is on page 27 of the Punch. Away from that, let's take a look at Daily Trust, where the bolder headline says, IPOB, military seeks extradition as Finland jails EPA. You can turn to page 4 to get the complete story. And below the nameplate, reps reject 6-year single term for presidents and governors. Grid collapse, NEC raises committee on national electrification. Ex-Fedeco scribe Amadu Kurfi buried in Katsina. And beside the picture, Palestine's welcome ICC's arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Girl, 13, beats classmate to death in Kogi. You can turn to page 16 to get the complete story. And below that on page 7, Kano government reunites 76 freed teenagers with families. And below the picture, ACF suspends chairman Osuman over unauthorized statements. The full story is found on page 7 of the paper. Let's take a look at The Guardian. The bolder headline says, dwindling sports fortunes, grassroots neglect, mediocrity strip Nigeria of youthful population edge. The full story is found on page 4 and 5 of the paper. And beside the picture on page 27, Sanwo-Olu presents 3 trillion naira budget to Assembly. Senate reviews law okays life imprisonment for drug traffickers and address internal conflict or face 2027 defeat. Body judge wants PDP. The full story is on page 7 of the paper. Below that on page 3, Governors, National Assembly agree on Constitution review. An article, LCCI faults Tinubu's 1.7 trillion naira fresh loan amid lawmakers' swift approval. The full story is on page 6 of the paper. And below that, still on page 6, Ohaneze DHQ Lord pro-Biafra's agitators arrest, hopeful of region's peace. And below the picture on page 3, NNPC scouts financiers for 5,120-kilometer pipeline amid $2.9 billion refinery repairs. 71% of households adversely affected by food price hike, says National Bureau of Statistics. You can turn to the business page 18 to get the complete story. Let's take a look at Vanguard. The bolder headline says, terrorism. Presidency Mom DHQ thrilled over arrest of Simon Ekpa and 4 others. The full story is found on page 5 of the paper. And above the nameplate, we strongly support Tinubu's reform, says IMF MD. On 2025, while we are proposing 3 trillion naira budget, says Sanwo-Olu. Can turn to page 18 to get the complete story. And beside that, on page 22, tax reform will be on the side of Nigerians, says NASS. Ogoni 4 versus Ogoni 9, the blame game continues 30 years after. The full story is found on page 24 of Vanguard. Below the picture, MBS survey says 2/3 of households lack money for healthy food. Reps reject bill on 6-year single tenure for president and governors. And NAS okays Tinubu's fresh request for $2.2 billion external loan. On the sports page 37 on 2024 CAF Awards, Nigerian women dominate with 15 nominations. To wrap up is the Nigerian Tribune, where the border headline says State Police, Kwara, Kebbi, Adamawa, FCT get 1 week to submit positions. The full story is found on page 3 of the paper. And above the nameplate on 2027 presidency, ACF suspends chairman over unauthorized statement. The full story is found on page 12 of the paper. And beside that, still on page 12, Reps reject rotational presidencies, 6-year single tenure for president and governors. Below the picture, CDS hails IPOB leader Simon Ekpa's arrest in Finland. The full story is found on page 3 of the paper. And that's the headlines making waves in Nigerian dailies of today. If any of these headlines caught your attention, do well to get a copy of the paper and read the full story on the identified pages.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts on Facebook, Housing TV Africa, on Twitter, Housing TV Africa, Instagram, Housing TV Africa. Join the conversation and keep up with latest housing updates.